Hello, 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 hello. What is going on? Hello, my little Assassin's Creed fans. Hello, my Moose fans. Hello, my Artie Wing Guy fans. Hello, my Night Owl Nerd fans. Hello, all my fans of all my personas. How's it going? Today's been an interesting day thus far. We're back in the Animus. And normally, I've been talking a lot these last couple of streams, but I think we're going to start today's stream off by starting with our main mission around the Boston Tea Party. And then after that, I think will be a little bit more conversation time. I've been neglecting some of the gameplay aspect from Assassin's Creed. We'll see how historically accurate some of this has been. But I think today we'll start off with the actual gameplay. And our main mission, I believe, goes into the Boston Tea Party. So, oh, I gotta plug my cord. Let's see here. There we go. Forgot to plug in my camera there. Hi. How's it going? I know a lot of you use your smiles to try to ignore weird situations. I'm not ignoring weird situations, but I got a pretty damn good smile. So hello. How are you all? Let's see if I can clean this up a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's nice. Oh boy. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Adamas! So I think we got our main mission, our next main mission here. Our next main mission is about the Boston Tea Party. And it's a pretty important one because this actually happened in Boston. They actually, I don't know what they're going to do here, but this was a real thing that happened. We'll see how accurate it is compared to the the historical accurateness of it versus what they portray in the video games. I like that there's a historical element to the Assassin's Creed series. I enjoy that. So hopefully this is has historical accuracy to it. Hopefully the frames are going to be good as well. Although it looks like it's still a little choppy, but whatevs. Doing our best. Now I think the frames issue definitely has something to do with the streaming app. Some people might say that it has something to do with buffering. I don't think, if I was streaming through a different app, it would be different. So, I use the Streamlabs app, and also I think FaZe Clan might be involved a little bit. Why do they call it? Anyways, I digress. But I do think there is an excuse given by people at Streamlabs. Because I think there are ways to make the laggy or frames kind of issue, be resolved. I have good enough internet here that the frames shouldn't be an issue unless somebody's doing something to manipulate it. So, for all the excuses, I'll get a fast travel again. So we're gonna start our little Boston Tea Party thing here. And then we'll get into what was my intended conversation. And that was about governance. So hopefully this sets up the stage a little bit of the governance aspect of things. And I hope you've been having a good week. I'm without making it too complicated, I have been in one hell of a civil rights journey. in a fight for my own independence, liberty kind of scenario. And well, I can't wait till I get to a point where things are settled, to the point where I can live my life above normal, both financially and in other ways. But it seems to, money always comes up in these kind of things. And like, oh, it's money, money, money. You know what? In the United States, money is a huge aspect of things. I know people don't like to talk about it, but it's the reality of it. And, I hope that my situation hasn't resulted in other Twitch streamers receiving a smaller income or a smaller, amount of earnings because they're trying to, prevent they're trying to get a certain earnings amount in case of the event of a financial settlement. But with that being said, I think I've got some hidden audience going on, or I think I'm bigger than even the best. I think I'm bigger even than their top earning. Honestly, I really do. I think I'm so big in some weird way. I really do, and I think my audience isn't being portrayed to me in the digital context. You see video games. You see certain video games in different games, kind of like referencing my existence. But nobody, how many people are referencing me by name, or at least in front of me? How many people are referencing, my existence by name to me? And if people are misrepresenting my viewer base, that affects these kind of things, because I honestly believe that my viewer base is really big and might be one of the biggest Twitch has ever had. And that might be one of the reasons why they're hiding it, because if they've caused me to miss out on income opportunities and collaboration or financial opportunities because they don't want to give me credit for my real audience base, I hope they're not going after other Twitch streamers to try to set a certain average amount that the Twitch streamer makes, because if I'm truly one of the biggest Twitch streamers to ever exist because of my situation, then they would be doing the rest of the Twitch streamers an injustice, because my financial settlement would go far and beyond whatever the average amount that the average streamer makes. So I certainly hope that there aren't streamers out there trying to undervalue how much money or income can be earned for Twitch streamers who are truly talented and truly have, marketing and capabilities within the Twitch world. That would be, I would feel bad about that for other Twitch streamers, and I would certainly want those people to be properly taken care of, or at least given the appropriate compensation. So, that's all I'll say for now. But the sooner I can help, my own life in a lot of different ways, and I'm in Arizona right now. I want to get back to California. I really do. I never wanted to leave California. I never wanted to leave. The only reason I left California to be with my dad, because while I was homeless, things were becoming unsafe for me. And I was requesting my own place, my own room. People could have put me up in a hotel. They could have done so many different things. And, so many people, instead of having the direct conversation with me, wanted to turn it into some kind of weird legal case or some civil rights case. And I heard this one, an origin story. People wanted to turn my homelessness. I was homeless for 3.5 years before I before I had to take myself out. I left the state of California because it became unsafe. I had a situation where somebody assaulted me with a deadly weapon. I have a police report for it and everything. So I didn't want to leave the state of California, and I want to go back. But I don't want to go back as a homeless person. I want to go back as somebody who can pay for my own way. So I can't wait to go back to California. But I want these kind of situations to be resolved before I do. Because I don't want to go back to California as a homeless person. And another thing, the moment I left California, all these fucking homeless programs start, the new mayor, Karen Bass, as soon as Karen Bass gets elected, all of a sudden all these homeless, housing options become open. They should have never kicked me out of the LA Grand, but that's a whole fucking other story altogether. Anyways, let's get into the main mission here in the Boston Tea Party. Hopefully it won't be so laggy. Although, I wonder if some of the lagginess has to do with people watching my stream. See, there you go. It looks good now. See, now it looks good. Now it's a little bit laggy again. So I don't know who's controlling those aspects of my gaming, but I'd like a smooth experience. I don't think I have to adjust my graphic settings. I think my graphic settings are a-okay the way they are. I think I've got a good enough computer, a good enough bandwidth to be able to facilitate this. There are, and again, there are times, when it looks fine. The only other thing I can think of is that I have a huge viewer base that's kind of like hidden or secret. And maybe having such a high volume of viewers, using a laptop, maybe that's a problem. But if I have a large viewer base and I'm not being made aware of it, how am I supposed to upgrade to things like, I got a laptop. I need a desktop, and I need to be able to get a desktop, and that takes money, you know what I mean? Or it takes people donating. Or offering their assistance for those kind of things. But at the same time, I also need my own place. And I'd like to get my own place back in California. I'm not interested. I want my life to continue in California. I never wanted to leave. The only reason I left California was because, people were starting to physically assault me. They broke my computer. They busted my computer up and took a fucking golf club. And interesting enough, this guy who did this, I took a video of him. I reported the police. I got a police report. And it turns out he's driving a stolen car. In my personal opinion, I think somebody, because of my situation, where was the viewer base, right? I think so many people saw me, and there was, I had a viewer base, but nobody wanted to recognize it. And they're like, well, who the fuck is this guy? I'm just some homeless bum, right? I mean, I made homelessness, I didn't even look homeless, to be honest with you. That's how good I was at dealing with homelessness. But, he's got a stolen fucking car, and he's one of these people who he looks like he was probably a gang member who was hired by somebody to try to get rid of me. Because he had one of those looks to him like he was a mimic and a copy of, like, how some, like, in gangs, they get people to look all the same, so if they commit a crime, they're like, oh, was it this guy? Was it this guy? If you can't tell the difference, then you can't prosecute him. So it was like one of those situations. It was a specific directed attack, in my opinion. I think somebody was sent to intentionally do something like that, and that's when I knew I needed to get in a better situation. I was at to the point where I was demanding. I really was. I was like saying people, I need you guys to put me into a hotel room or a housing situation, or you guys are gonna fight, domestic terrorism charges. Because that's how much I felt I felt like it was domestic terrorism being committed against me. I really did, and I still do. I'm under I think there's enough information and evidence to support domestic terrorism. Now maybe that's a little extreme, but I think there's enough evidence to support it. I really do. So, I was telling people to house me or deal with domestic terrorism. And I wasn't saying that in a joking kind of way. I was saying that because people were, it's obvious, even before my homelessness, when I was in Van Nuys, people knew who I was. And they knew who I was because of my gaming. And they watched my homelessness occur, and they could have done things about it then, and instead they try to make it into an origin story. So, the sooner the financial aspects of my life get resolved, I can't wait. I might not be
ships back, cargo and all.
I might not be involved in certain aspects of the, I might not be always involved in Apex, but I think Assassin's Creed, regardless of how things turn out, I'm going to commit to the Assassin's Creed series at least through one playthrough. To go all the games and to do at least one playthrough like that. And if maybe I'm talented enough, then I can redo the series maybe again, replay the series with the whole cosplay and everything. That might be nice, but I'd like to to be able to do things in the video game community that I've been a part of for 20 plus years. I've been playing video games for 20 years. And I would like to continue to do those things. But at my own kind of capacity and pace. You know, everybody does the 8-hour grind, 8-hour streams, 9. I did that. I did the 9-hour streams. I did the 10-hour streams. Back in the day when I was playing World of Tanks console, 5 years ago, I would do 24 to 30-hour streams, but nobody noticed me then because I was just a console streamer. I thought, and that's one of the reasons I became homeless, because I had the rideshare stuff and I was putting more time into the video game because I didn't want to do the rideshare stuff. And people, and I was doing this based on the idea that people knew who I was. I made a Twitter post doing EA game, it was like EA thing, and that's why I think Apex is involved, because I did some Twitter post, referencing EA and sports games, even though that wasn't particular, Apex isn't a sports game, but, it's just, there's so many things that you can look at and associate and make a connection to, proving that people knew about my situation. And, so when this all gets resolved, because it's reached a point, I've been going through things like severe emotional distress. It's not PTSD, post-traumatic stress and emotional distress are very different things. It's just more of the fact that, I'm aware of what's going on and I'm trying to investigate it myself, hoping that, certain people help my investigation to support my claims, because I think there's enough evidence to support it. And, the sooner I can get a resolution so I can then purchase my own house and then invest in my own streaming equipment. And at the very least, I might not be involved in other video games. It might be a small thing that I do. It might, but I still want to be here doing streams. I might not even be on Twitch. After this whole thing is resolved, me and Twitch might, separate our ways, depending on how much they like me or not. But even if that's the case, I'll have my YouTube account, and if me and Twitch part ways, then I'm going to create my own website where you all can watch in my own little world, on my own website with my own streaming platform and stuff like that, and then hopefully I'll have the audience follow me there, because I do believe that my audience is much bigger than the one viewer that shows up, because, since I've been streaming for years, it just tells me that there's one viewer. That's all it tells me, and I know for a fact there's a much bigger audience than that. So for my audience to be accurately represented, that's an important aspect to me, and it helps people establish, my legitimacy in this whole thing. But honestly, based on people manifesting things in my video game, I go out to the grocery store, and people were, even when I was homeless, when I was playing the video games when I was homeless, people were manifesting situations based on my video game experiences. And that's why it was frustrating when people would cause losses, not because of my skill, but because of some sort of narrative. And so people would manifest these situations in real life. And it's like, how could you be this popular? And then you start noticing that people around the world. So how can I have one viewer? How could I have one single viewer, but have people recognize my existence in different ways all the way around the world? And so it's things like that that don't make sense to me. And I'm trying to get these things resolved, and I feel like a financial settlement is in order, or a financial agreement, or whatever you call it. And when that happens, I'm going to be going back to California, and I'm going to continue my Assassin's Creed series, regardless of what happens. I mentioned one time that, I only want to do this till the financial thing was settled. That was more a reference to the Twitch side of things, because it's obvious that Twitch doesn't care about me as much as I care about the whole free speech platform concept that they provide. I wasn't referencing Assassin's Creed per se. I mean, maybe I did say that, but and that was on the one stream that I went totally fucking. I had a really fucking severe emotional breakdown. Trying to get myself canceled. That was me having an emotional distress moment. I apologize to my fan base who took that and maybe thought that I didn't take this. I like Assassin's Creed. I really like the Ubisoft games. Ubisoft is from France, and this is going to go into my whole governance thing, because France and America have a really tight-knit relationship. They believe in similar values, at least we're supposed to originally. now the whole religious governance thing is caused maybe some relationship differences in relationship in regard to France. But France is another country that governs not based on religion, and we'll go into that after the Boston Tea Party. And so Ubisoft, a French company, I like their products. They're not afraid to include aspects of history that are really accurate. This whole animus thing, there's an element of truth to it. People reliving passage. There's elements of truth to that, and they intertwine it with real history, at least in this particular game. The Black Flag is, a little different, but in this game, there are elements of historical, realness. So, once things get settled financially, I'm going to move back to California for sure. I miss California. I really do. It's my home. It's where I was born. It's where I was raised. It's where I've lived most of my life. I lived in Arizona for a very little bit, a couple months when I was graduated college. And then I've had family here. I've had many, other family that's lived here as well. And that's another thing. I have an uncle who's lived in Arizona for a long time. And there was a day that I was going to go visit my uncle with my dad. And the day that I'm going to go visit my uncle with my dad, and this is when we were playing Revelations, and this is why I cut Revelations short. I didn't step away from the series, but I did move on from the Revelations. I was revealing things. I was posting evidence on my YouTube, and my uncle died of a heart attack the same day that I was going to go meet him. People are actually killing people because of my streaming. Some people will say he had health problems, and his health problems developed while I was homeless. That's another thing. But the day that we were going to go meet him, he got a heart attack. Or he died from a heart attack. And I don't want to say he died because of me, but somebody certainly did something to induce that, I believe. I really do. And it's things like that, it makes free speech and the journey for free speech difficult at times. But I'm not giving up on it. I moved on from the Revelation series ultimately because I thought it was, a meh game, and I had done a good job at revealing a lot of the bullshit corruption that was going on. But so I have California, Arizona. I have family. I have family that's been in Arizona. Arizona is not just a random place to me. Arizona is a place where I've had family. So, I don't want to, I don't have anything against Arizona, but I want to go back to California. I never wanted to leave in the first place. The only reason I left was for safety concerns, because I was this solo person who clearly was a recognized video gamer, but being censored and silenced to a certain degree, trying to figure out a resolution to a fucked up situation. And I made a choice to go to, they dished out one more stimulus check. I was able to get my stimulus check, from COVID, and I used it to put myself in a safer situation. So, when I hopefully get this financial settlement stuff figured out, and if people have donated, and here's another aspect. If people have donated to me, I haven't got, there might be some fraud and crime related to that. If people really have sent me donations to try to get me in my own house, if people have sent me donations digitally, for what, none of it's reached me. Not $1, not one penny. I've got a Venmo on my page. I've got a Cash App thing on my page. You can subscribe. You can donate through Streamlabs. You can, all this is on my Twitch page. And if there are people interfering with people's ability to do this, or if they, if people have done things like donate, somebody's been interfering, with that, ability for it to get to me. And that bothers me as well. So that's another reason why I think a financial settlement is ordered. And if people still want to continue to donate me, that's great too. Or subscribe to me, that would be great. Honestly, I'd like people to support me financially. Honestly, I like that. I don't mind it. Some people might be bothered by that. I don't mind it. I think it's great because money really is a big factor in society today. From influencing political elections to government, to government assistance. Money plays a big part in governance, which is why this whole thing with religion and governance is such a big deal, because the religious world has, they recognize that as well, and that's why the whole "in God we trust" thing it's a big thing. But anyways, let's get into the main mission here, and let's see what the whole Boston Tea Party story is for those of you who aren't aware. Let's see what Ubisoft has to say.
Men like Adams, they talk and nothing happens.
Well, here we go. The Tea Party, Boston Tea Party. Here we go.
What happens now? We wait for the signal. What signal?
This meeting can do nothing further to save the country.
That one.
Evening, gentlemen. Shall we be off?
No.
What's the matter?
I have spent today drawn from one bit of madness to another with nothing to show for it. Before I go any further, I would like to know exactly what it is you intend.
Of course. First, we make our way to Nathaniel Bradley's house to fetch the rest of our little group. Then it's on to Griffin's Wharf, where we board the ships and dump the tea. Simple as that.
Simple seems a bit charitable.
Cheer up, Connor. For tonight, we are all victors. The Sons of Liberty get to send a message to England, and you rob William Johnson of his financing. Your village will be saved. I've an idea. Why don't you lead the way? That should keep us out of any further trouble. Am I right?
December 16th, 1773.
Damn it, more guards.
We need to turn the crowd's anger to
Big
our
year.
advantage.
Say the word, Connor, and I will make it so.
Big year. So it's 1776, but we'll get to that. We gotta kill target. Okay, so we gotta kill the guards. I don't know if they actually killed anybody in the actual Boston Tea Party, but, going with the Assassin's Creed theme. A lot of guards here. Can we whistle? How do we eliminate all these guards? So I just gotta like Rambo it? Drop. Drip a drop. A drip a drop. Okay. I guess we're just going for it. Whoa, look at this. They're back to their little glitchy ways. See? Look, look, look. It's glitched. More lovely people doing lovely things. Huh? Yeah. Little Assassin's Creed. Oh, where'd you come from? Good night. Goodbye. Sayonara. Excusez-moi. Excuse me, I have a bunch of tea to throw into the ocean here. Thanks. Muchas gracias. More targets, okay. Here we go. Oh! The floating tea box. Oh. Oh! This tee box doesn't apparently exist, but it's there. It's definitely there. Ooh, look at musket. Let's pick up the musket. I've seen it. Okay. Too much time. Traditional Assassin's Creed method. Problem. Just pick up one of these. Pick up. Aim. Oh! Oh! Run away. Run away. Nothing to see here. Just an assassin using firearm. Hiya! Oh! Okay. That works. Just gotta reload. Reload our musket. Reloading of the musket. Nothing like the good old musket reload. What a shot. Okay, fellas. Fellas. Let me just swing this giant fucking gun around. Yeah, I'm pressing parry. Counter. 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 Break defense. Counter. Counter. Hiya! Counter! Right in the... get him in the... right in the... Yeah. That's it? The entirety of the Boston Tea Party? I mean, this is kind of more how it happened, right? They snuck in the middle of the night, and they went aboard the ship, and then they tossed the tea into the river. This is more kind of representation. And I believe they did it... I believe they did it to show their distaste for
We need to keep those
taxation.
bastards at bay while the tea is being done.
Oh, they don't really talk about that.
Let me up. I'm yours to command.
Wow. Okay, we got to dump tea, put redcoats in the water, perform a musket air assassination. Holy crap. Let's see, pick up. And then throw. Yay. I just Boston Tea Party, and that happened. Nope, I'm gonna Boston Tea Party together. And again. Well, this is fun. This is me. Look, I'm being American. Look how American I am. I'm doing American independence things. Yeah. You know, what's the modern day of the Boston Tea? Like, what's the modern equivalent we could do in America to have people care about civil rights again? It's like equivalent to like the Boston Tea Party. You know, what's an equivalent? Okay, one optional objective. Okay, now we got to throw redcoats into the water. Nope, not redcoat. We have to throw redcoats in the water, and see if we can get these optional objectives. Or they just kill all the redcoats already. Okay, it looks like they already got all the redcoats. This guy's shooting the boat. Okay. Can I throw you? do I throw you in the water? I don't know how to throw him in the water. Oh! Oh, that's the... Hold on. Let's see if I can... Okay, it doesn't count because you're not the main character. Oh my gosh. Let's see if we can get one of these. Whoop! William Molyneux. Why do you... Paul Revere's still good. Oh, does that count? I don't think I'm gonna be able to throw these red coats in the water. Let's see if I can get close enough. No, I don't think it's gonna happen. Ooh. Does that count? Doesn't count. Okay, then we're just gonna finish the tea part of this. We're just gonna finish the tea part of this. Tea part of the. Oh, see, okay, it's not funny. This is not funny. Nobody should be laughing. Nobody laugh. This is very serious. Absolutely nobody do anything that makes a smile on their face unless it's a fake smile. You're allowed to fake smile. Everybody, you're allowed to fake smile, but no real smiling allowed. No actual real smiling allowed. I think we're gonna have to, yeah. Oh, my ally died. Oh, that's too bad. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Well, I was trying to complete the secondary objectives, but we're gonna have to do that at a later time. So let's just get this tea done. Let's get this tea party mission done. Try the secondary objectives. I think the secondary objectives are just troll. Kind of like some of this frame rate issue, just a troll situation that doesn't need to happen. And, yeah. Just doing my duty as an Americano assassino. You think the water, like, did anybody ever drink the water? Like, after this happened, they were like, yo, what does tea ocean taste like? Probably a bad idea, considering salt factor. Good factors of salt and bad factors of salt. bad salt factors. Drinking ocean water, not a good idea. See if we can get this in before the redcoat showed up. Ooh. Looks like we got a frame rate battle going on. Hiya. Well, that clears all the tea. Oh, there's one more. One more. And there it goes. Now we can take on these guys. And our fellow American liberators can properly finish the rest of these tea barrels right to the face. Nice. Our good friend Paul Revere here. Paul Revere, notable for alerting the Americans, or the colonists, I should say, the independent colonists, but at this time it was just colonies, American colonies, that the British were on the way. We've done it! Sam Adams. Really hates tea. Loves beer. Hates tea.
Connor? We saved the last one for you.
Wait. Like for me to keep? Or to throw in the ocean? These are, looks like the Templars. Oh boy. Ooh. Look at that. Little chirpy chirp chirp.
Best we get out of here.
Little chirp. Chirpy chirp chirp chirp. And that was the Boston Tea Party. Wow. Not as historically informative as I was hoping for. But there it was. And so we did. Cool. So let's get back to some of my life's perspectives here. So governance. Here's an aspect of governance, the Boston Tea Party. You know, America was first being founded. It was the Church of England. It was England, but it was just ultimately the Church of England representing the English military, assets, and this might be more relevant, in the upcoming aspects of this game, where the actual revolutionary part happens. Although, how far are we in? Let's see. Oh, we're 46 of the way done. But this also takes into account. This also takes into account the side missions. So even though it says 48%, it might be more, closer to the end of the storyline. Maybe, we'll see. I forget how long the story goes. So governance, during this time period, not to give any spoiler alerts, but when America started their independence war against the British, they did need the aid of a country, or technically two countries. I believe it was Spain, which was an interesting ally at the time. I'm sure I honestly haven't really looked into the whole history of Spain, but France. France helped America gain independence when the colonists and the militia, were running low on supplies and people and ammunition. It was France that was helped aid our fight for independence and liberty. Now America had already gained, they were trying to gain their independence, and they had done that by forming colonies. And I don't know if they were considered states at the time, but they were call American colonies, and that's how they were establishing their independence. And then the liberty part came after that in the form of separating themselves from the Church of England. So France, who had already established kind of like this liberty aspect of their history, France, they ruled the world at some point. Napoleon, it wasn't Napoleon, I believe, that was able to conquer the entire world, the little short man. And this allowed France, instead of taking over the world via conquering, they kind of think they relegated it to their nice state of France. And, so they had that kind of liberty aspect already established to a certain extent. And so France helped us establish our liberty by aiding, and lending assistance when we needed it to separate from the Church of England. They had this whole thing about governance not based on religion, and, the Church of England was obviously a religious entity, and, religious ideas were protected even at that time, but it was the idea of independence that really was the foundation. The independence from the church, independence to be free kind of deal. And, we got the aid of liberty and the ability to protect that independence from France. And so France and the United States have a very big connection in that way. The Statue of Liberty, for those of you who are aware, the Statue of Liberty, which... Yeah, hello, horsey. How you doing? Hi. Hello. Is that you, Ubisoft? How you doing? The Statue of Liberty, which, was a sign, a huge sign of liberty to people who were immigrating to the United States when we received it. When they got to Ellis Island, was a really, really big deal. Because it represented so much. And so France and the United States and their pursuit of independence and liberty, Now France, they also value fraternity. It's big for them, which is a little bit more secretive, fraternity. But the United States kind of adopted that in the form of colleges, even though it's more Greek-oriented, But obviously the idea of fraternity, oh, look at that. Check that out. The idea of fraternity obviously goes back a while. And, yeah. Hello, my little woodland friends. So, when the United States was first trying to establish its independence and liberty, it needed to govern, and one of the foundations, of America was, this idea of separation of church and state. And that probably was in part due to France's aid. France probably had an idea of liberty, and that probably influenced a little bit of the separation. I don't know if it was the full influence, but I'm sure it had something to do with it as we established ourselves. And I think it was 1776 when a lot of this went down. Ooh, let's get this feather here. And so I think, it was the integrity of the United States, it wasn't based on civil rights necessarily at the time. Civil rights developed as America continued to establish itself, but it was definitely founded on the idea of independence and liberty. Where this feather be? So France shares a lot of this kind of concept as well. They have a different, kind of like viewpoint in the sense that, they're one state. Oh, they're one state surrounded by other countries that, bear. Oh boy. Sorry?
Yeah, man.
But the United States was a collection of states who were valuing independence and liberty. So France might have lended aid to us with the idea that we could help spread, this idea of governance based on ideals and the idea of integrity being based off of, independence and liberty. And I think France wanted to support this journey that Americans, or the colonists, were basically, trying to create in a much larger way than what France had done. Now, France had conquered the world, but, they backed off at some point. Right? There's still a lot of French influence in some places, without a doubt. You have certain places around the world that still, even to this day, oh my gosh. Let me just take this bear out. There's still places around the world that still have an influence of France,
Yeah, man.
and that still have, they used French as their language because of the conquering that France did. But England also tried to conquer the world. This should also be mentioned. So, where's this? Oh, it's up there. So I think France liked the idea of America because we also shared this idea of independence and liberty as governance. And so they included things like separation of church and state. And so many people have different interpretations about what this whole thing, the separation of church and state is. And I believe separation of church and state has to do with governance and not using a religious system, which in history's past has, many examples of violating people's right, independence and liberty. The churches want people to do things as a part of, we mentioned this last time, community. They have a lot of, ways that they want people to live their life, and they have certain perspectives that were based on thousands of years of their own, experiences. But America being a new country, and France being a country that started dabbling in independence and liberty, being non-religion, I think there was something to be said about this whole idea of independence and liberty. So France aided their assistance, I'm sure for other political reasons other than just independence and liberty, but I think that does play a big part of it. And, as America went forward, they knew that because of the Church of England and its rule, and, the Tea Party was something that was established by the Church of England, all the church, church. That's why it's separation of church and state, right? because the church had so much rule at the time. You know, they had so much rule and governance in the world. England was kind of doing their conquering thing. France had done their conquering thing. And, you know, people really wanted a way to step away from the church, who had certain ideals and values that weren't always representative of the people. They were more representative of the church. So, you know, we started this idea of trying to, you know, create freedom based off of a different perspective. And so separation of church and state was included in some of our foundation. It was a part of our foundation, you know. It wasn't one of those things that was included afterwards. You know, the idea of separation of church and state was one of those things that was included right from the start. So it was a valuable and important aspect, as much as the independence and liberty was when America was first creating its independence and liberty. So, you know, it really is an important aspect. And nowadays, you know, I've mentioned before all the ways, and I think that they're intruding on American governance. But, you know, here's another thing. You know, some of the world can be fearful of American independence sometimes. And I don't think they should be fearful. You know, I think they should be okay with American independence and liberty, because I don't think America's trying to conquer the world. Now, some people suggest otherwise. You know, they say, oh, you got military bases around the place. You know, you go into places like the Middle East, you're trying to make them American. I think it's more complicated than that. You know, I think one of the cool things that America, you know, we don't have to conquer the world to establish our liberty and independence. You know, maybe that was one of the things, the difference between France and America. You know, France, in order to establish their power and strength, you know, they conquered the world. You know, England, trying to establish their power and strength, tried to conquer the world. Did they actually officially conquer the entire world? You know, I know they had a large influence in a lot of different places, but I don't know if they actually got to the full conquering part. France technically did. Full sink, right? So America, I don't think, is one of those places. You know, it's a superpower, but I don't think it's one of those places where you need to conquer the world. I think we've hit this time and age in the world where, you know, America's big enough and it's got enough space in it that we can, you know, we can practice certain aspects of governance, you know, like non-religious governance based on independence, liberty, and now civil rights, that are, you know, not world-conquering-esque. You know, when the countries like China and Russia, you know, Western American, you know, taking, you know, worry about ideological government systems taking over the world. I don't think that's the issue in America. I really don't. I think our country's big enough that we can establish those kind of things right here on our own soil. You know, that's why it's kind of sucky when, you know, this whole thing with religious governance is interfering with our true intentions. You know, it's just very sucky. So, you know, let's see what I got here. I mean, I'm kind of stating most of what I've said before, to be honest with you. You know, America really is supposed to be one of those places where people can be anything they want to be. And independence, liberty, and civil rights gives people that ability. The religious world has a tendency to violate people's rights. They have a long history of murder, death, killing, covering up. And I think just people wanted to take a step away from that, and they wanted to govern in a more way that was representative of you know, community, certain community, but also individualism. You know, the ability to be who you want to be, to do what you want to do. You know, living on the open range of America. You know, the Wild Wild West is a really good example. Is there a Wild Wild West version of Assassin's Creed? Or is that just Red Dead Redemption? So, I'm not trying to give you a history lesson in the sense of, you know, I haven't been reading books and trying to, you know, I'm trying to just, like, establish things based on my own kind of, like, thought process of how I recognize the world as somebody who values independence, liberty, and civil rights. You know, I'm trying to give you a basic bitch perspective, in a sense. You know, I'm somebody who values independence, liberty, and liberal rights. Independence, liberty, and civil rights. And I'm living in a day and age where government is being intruded by religious entities. And I was raised Jewish, but I'm not religious. And I notice a lot of people using religion as a means to kind of like establish different ways to tell people how to live. You know, they're telling people how to live, and I can only imagine that these kind of things occurred long ago. You know, this was happening before America created. The religious world had done governance. You know, they've been doing things like the Church of England. That was religious governance. You know, so, you know, when people are trying to bring back this old element of governments that has already been established and that America specifically fought independence for, you know, it's confusing to me as somebody who's non-religious and values more of the independent liberty and civil rights aspects of our society. It's confusing to me why people are so interested in invading American democracy. And again, you know, some people think it's not such a big deal, but the whole thing with, you know, the God thing on the money and in the, you know, Pledge of Allegiance, it really is a big deal, you know, because some of these people are trying to, like, you know, discriminate against paying other people. And, you know, this is how it kind of ties into my situation. You know, some people, because of my non-religious beliefs, you know, they're trying to say, oh, so you don't want money. Well, why would that be the case? Americans are capitalists. I'm still a capitalist. You know, I might not be a greedy capitalist, but I'm a capitalist nonetheless. You know, capitalism, you know, greed in capitalism, that's where, you know, that's one of the downsides to capitalism, is the greed aspect. But, you know, I think some people have not wanted to pay me because I don't represent a moral and ethical perspective that's representative of a religious group. You know, they bring family. You know, family's a big thing, a topic that they bring in. And the religious group like to use their version of family as the correct version, when the reality is, you know, just like sexuality, just like gender, you know, and that's why there's been such pushback, you know, from the religious communities when you know, gay marriage and lesbian marriage was taking place, and, you know, gender of the same sex. You know, it was the religious communities that pushed back on it because they didn't want the idea of family, you know, trampled on or interfered with, because they had built, you know, they had spent so many years developing their version of family. You know what? Just like gender orientation, sexual orientation, it's the same thing, you know. And if they're you know, people have been discriminated for sexual orientation and gender and ethnicity, of course. And people, you know, the idea of America's first, you know, having religion being protected, it was based on worship. It wasn't based on the idea of government. It was based on the idea of worship, you know. And I don't think religion is supposed to be a business model. And when religion, you know, these religious communities, specifically the monotheistic ones, you know, when things like God are on the currency and in the Pledge of Allegiance, they get this idea in their head that they're the preferred preference, or that they have the order of operations in their favor, but that's not true. And I think what they've done to try and delay the inevitable is, you know, they do kill people. You know, they kill people for speaking out. You know, that's why I bring up the thing, you know, with my uncle. I don't want to say that they did that, you know, they say he had health problems, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? I think it could have been something where somebody was trying to kill an aspect of my family because I speak out too much about these things. And if the religious world is killing people to try to silence people to keep their power in place, how's that not terrorism? Domestic terrorism. How's that not a coercion of democracy? You know? So, you know, that's why these things bother me. That's why the money aspect is important. You know, when people try to say, like, oh, money's not important, it's art, money. Yeah, well, art, I'm telling a story in art. But you know what? I'm still an American, and I'm still capitalism, and I still care about financing my life, and I still care about my civil rights. And my civil rights have been violated as a homeless person. Without a doubt, I've had civil rights violations. And instead of people resolving my situation so I could better pursue my art, they tried to set up these trapped scenarios to try to make it look like everybody was violating people's civil rights. How fucked is that? You know, like instead of doing the right thing for one person, they just violate everybody's rights to, like, take the bar down a notch. Well, that's the problem with this thing. In my opinion, that's the freaking problem. You're lowering the bar and standard of American independence, liberty, and civil rights to not benefit the people who you're seriously violating. So if people have been denying me payment simply because I have non-religious beliefs, that's, you know, and they're doing so because they have the premise that because it says in God we trust on currency, that they don't have to pay me because I'm not religious, fuck them. That's why this battle's happening. That's why this thing's going on. You know, that in itself is a discriminatory act. Not paying me simply because of my non-religious views. And you know what they're going to probably try and say is, oh, but in America, you know, if you're not religious, you're not protected by the same right. Okay, so where do my morals and values come from? The United States of America. So you're telling me I don't have a right to get paid because my values are more American than religious in a place where separation of church and state exists? I don't think so. You know, this might not be the best legal argument, or maybe it is a good legal argument. I don't know. But I can tell you this. I think people have discriminated against job opportunities. I think people have messed with job opportunities. I'm speaking specifically, I want to be an independent. I want to work for myself. I don't want to work for anybody else. I went to school till I was 26, and then I got mostly independent jobs. You know, I've had jobs ever since I was in high school. I've done part-time work. And when I was in college, I worked. So working, all these people say, oh, you just get a job, you want money. I did get a job. Okay? I've had jobs. I went to school. You know who else worked? My mom worked. My mom was honestly someone who worked independently as a woman during some of the, toughest years for women to work. She worked her whole life, and she only got compensated a certain amount of money. And I know there's a lot of other people out there who've worked around. My dad's worked. But none of us have had the huge financial success that I feel might have been important to certain aspects of life. It's just, people like to make a big deal about the money, but the money is a big deal. And the money's a big deal because this religious group, these religious entities, use money to market a religious perspective, and not just all religious perspective. They used money to market one monotheistic group. And in the United States of America, it wasn't the right for one monotheistic group to worship. It was the right for all religions to worship. And that's that's another aspect of this that bothers me, is that separation of church and state exists not just for Christianity, Judaism, Islam, which are the monotheistic faiths. It exists for every single religion. All of them. And there's hundreds. There's like at least 100. Well, maybe not 100. How many different religions are there in the world? The most populated, right? These are the ones that are having the most power because they have the most population numbers. But that doesn't excuse their discriminatory behaviors, because it's illegal to discriminate people based on your religious beliefs. But I think they tried to use the angle that if you're non-religious, that it doesn't count. But you know what? It does count, because it's the right to worship a religion, and it's also the right not to worship a religion. So I don't worship a religion. I don't worship anything. I value my country's foundation of independence and liberty. And during my lifetime, civil rights became a part of that. So I hope that people, I personally feel that my income situation and my job opportunity ability, and I want to be independent. I do my best when I'm working for myself. I want to collaborate with people. I don't want to be a solo person my whole life. I'd like to collaborate with people on projects, but in collaboration or in partnership, not being an employee of somebody who can tell me what to do and boss me around. And I know other people have that belief as well, but I think given my unique circumstances and situations, I'm in a very good place to do that, where other people might not be, and mostly because a lot of them are religious. Now, if we get to a point in society where more people are non-religious and they believe more in the ideals and values of independence, liberty, and civil rights, you might see a greater, you might see a growth in small businesses and in people being their own business people. Because if religion thinks they have control in the financial game because they were able to get things like in God and we trust on currency, and they're like, oh, we can dictate who gets money because it's our currency, blah, 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 blah. Just so bullshit. It's discriminatory not to pay people based on certain beliefs. But you got to be able to prove that too. And I think things have occurred that definitely prove it. So, I think if people trend more towards a non-religious perspective, or even if they keep their religion, but they keep it in a worship sense, I think you might see a growth of independent, jobs being born, and more small businesses taking flourishing, because, what's one of the downsides of capitalism? Monopolies. Monopolies are one of the downside. And how do you not monopolize a society? You allow people to make their own businesses. You give people the ability to be their own business owners. So that's why it's important to me that I'm my own boss and my own business owner, because, I've done most of the things in my life on my own accord, in the sense that I could try and dictate my own schedule, my sleep schedule. I've unusual hours at times. And some people like this 9 to 5 mentality, which is nice. Some people having this structured life is nice, but for those people that don't want to have it, you can't discriminate against them and say, oh, if you just get a job and this, that, or the other. It has nothing to do with the job. What it really has to do is with work ethic. And I have work ethic. I got an associate's degree. I got a bachelor's degree. I did college sports. I had jobs while I was going to school. Even as a homeless person, people didn't even know I was homeless, because I made homelessness look so easy and good when it really wasn't. It was more difficult than that. So my work ethic is there. My work ethic is there. It's not about the job per se. I think they use the job thing, as some sort of excuse to try and boss somebody around in a dominant, submissive way, or to put them through, the same kind of like trolling scenarios, but in a different environment. And to be honest with you, I think there needs, if that's the kind of stuff that's going on in certain jobs, then there should be an improvement in regards to that for employees. I don't like being messed with psychologically in ways that I've seen people mess with me. And other people don't as well. But, some people have this idea that, instead of ending the practices, it's all like, just deal with it, or, why don't you just why don't you just get tougher emotionally? That's bullshit too, because then you can use that excuse in anything. Then I can tell you all, why don't you all get tougher emotionally? You don't like my personality, you don't like my behavior, why don't you get tougher emotionally? That's why it's a stupid example, or a stupid argument, because anybody could say it about anything. So, I've shown work ethic. It's not about work. It's where I have my work ethic. I think some people just wanted to try and put me in some weird job situation to try to establish some sort of dominance over me. Because, as a member of the kink community, the dominant submission thing is a certain aspect. And some people who are a part of the kink community, they try to use that to psychologically mess with and try to, oh, look at the dominant not be so dominant. And then they bully people. And, that's a whole other thing, the whole bullying aspect of things. So, my independence and liberty are very important to me for a multitude of reasons. And the money aspect, in my life, trying to get financed and to be able to afford a place of my own in the place that I grew up in, that's also important to me. That's why I want to go back to California. I'm from there. I was born in LA. I lived in LA. For most of my life, I've lived there. I've been a homeless person in Los Angeles, which is a huge social issue. I've been a part of that. I've even, contributed to the entertainment aspect, this Twitch thing. LA's it's one of the leaders in entertainment. It's my home, and I want to go back. So, for the people who try to make who try to make noise to try to distract people from these kind of things, for those people, fuck you. It's important. It really is important. And trying to discriminate and violate my civil rights to make yourselves not have to pay somebody or to compensate somebody financially, it's only going to end up worse, in my opinion. If the person really is true to who they say they are, and I really am true to who I say I am, I really am. I'm an individual who's true and honest to a very, very high degree, in such a high degree that, some people really want me to be a politician. And you know what? Maybe one day that's possible, but I would only want to be a politician if I was representing a group of people who also represented the idea of independence, liberty, and civil rights with non-religion in mind. That's who I would want to represent if I ever became a politician. And I don't know if that exists at the moment, where everybody lives in the same town who all believe in this non-religious independence, liberty, and civil rights idea, because there's still all these civil rights violations. You know how I'm going to know that I'm living in a community that values those three things? When I'm in a community that I have my own place and people's civil rights aren't being violated. When I have my own independence and when my civil rights aren't being violated and other people's civil rights aren't being violated, that's when I'll have a better idea that I could represent a group of people that are similar to my perspective. Until then, I want to fight the civil rights battle of trying to reorder the order of operations in America for starters, we really do need to get the whole God thing removed. We really do. It's such an important thing because the religious community is using things like In God We Trust to not pay people as an excuse. It's not even a belief, it's an excuse. They're like, if religion really doesn't have a control on money, then why can't you get, because it's that corrupt, because democracy has been coerced that much. It really has. And I don't know why people aren't more willing to fight unless people's life and death, unless there's an element of life and death and people, they don't want to die for these things. But at the same time, that's what American independence was all about. People died for that. People died in the Civil War. People died fighting for civil rights, even during the civil rights movement. Remember Kent State? Remember the whole Kent State scenario? Those were very peaceful people who were shot down for trying to make a civil rights, point. So, the whole idea of life and death in America still exists when people are fighting for the civil rights. That's why it's a dangerous topic sometimes, but it shouldn't be. We laid the foundation to where it shouldn't be. And so, when people bring up money, I get it, but in my situation, it really matters to my life and my well-being and my independence. And I know it matters to other people, and I truly hope that other people can have their situations resolved as well, if they're in similar plights. And maybe I can be an outlet in the future. Maybe I might be a place where other people can bring their stories, But if I can't get my story started financially, then how am I going to be? There's only so much I can do. Because I do value individualism as well. I still want to pursue other aspects in life, but I want this civil rights thing. This is important to me. I'm not going to abandon it, but I also don't want it to be used as a means to occupy all of my time. Because as an American, I have a right to choose what I do with my time. And I want to choose to dedicate time to civil rights stuff. But I also want to choose to dedicate it towards building a family. Because that's another protected right. The ability to build a family. And just because I have a different idea of what family is, I don't think it's fair to discriminate me and to deny me the ability to date people and be in relationships. Because my idea of family is not traditional. I don't have a traditional family ideal. I'm trying to build a family that's different than what most people would consider family. And it doesn't even necessarily mean having children. At this point in my life, building my family, it's not necessarily about having a child or giving birth. It's about the element of the family unit from a unique perspective, even if it has more controversial aspects to it. It's totally sane. It's just it's my journey. So, for people to discriminate against my dating life because I have a different idea or a more a non-traditional perspective of family, that's also, it's been real shitty for my life. I've got people that go back all the way to high school who would have been a perfect match for me and that were intercepted or messed with or coerced into dating other people specifically because I wasn't religious. Specifically because I wasn't religious or a certain religious faith. And to think that my entire life could be different because somebody chose to put their religion to the side in favor of my ability to create relationship or long-term relationships. I've dated people. I've dated people before, for like a month or so. I've dated a couple people for a month. Long time ago. It's been a while since I've been in an actual dating situation, but I'm not seeking a short-term relationship. When I say when I say things like I want to be with a girlfriend, not necessarily a wife. I think you have to get to the girlfriend before you get to the wife. When I say things like I want to date people, it's not for a short. I want a long-term relationship. I want somebody who will date me and become my girlfriend with the intent of potentially becoming my wife. So, there's a lot of, and that's a civil rights issue in itself. People messing with my ability to date simply because I have a non-traditional view of family. So, this civil rights thing is very important to me, and I'm trying to establish the aspects of my life that I can control while also doing the things that I enjoy. So that's why independence, liberty, and civil rights, those are three things that a person can value in their life and have, elements of control of their time and not have to like spend too much wasted time on things while also having the freedom to do other things in their life. Hobbies and interests, become more educated, to gain experiences in different areas. I don't want my civil rights journey to just be bogged down without the ability to experience what it is to be American. And I don't think you need to only be a religious person to have that experience. So, and it definitely helps when you have capital or income or a financial bank account that can support a lifestyle, especially one in California. Because California, to live comfortably, the housing is really the most expensive part. But if I want to purchase a house, I don't want to just get an apartment. I want an actual house so I can have more I'm somebody who probably needs more privacy unless I have neighbors who don't mind, who I am. But I think but that brings up a whole different topic of conversation. But I'd like to, have my bank account reflect an amount that I won't have to worry about money, so I can pursue, different aspects of bringing America back to its foundation of independence and liberty and away from religious governance. I'd like that to be a part of my journey. I want to get things like God removed from the Pledge of Allegiance. And I know that might be insulting to the large population of religious people in the world, but that's how it was before you all were fighting a Cold War. And you won the Cold War, so you can go back to that. Instead of conditioning young children to say the Pledge of Allegiance and conditioning them with this idea of the word God without them having any idea what it means, or making up their own interpretation of it, instead of it just being something about worshiping an old idea of morals and ethics. This is America's today's modern version of morals and ethics to a certain degree. And a lot of it's controversial, but you know what? You get that with diversity. You can't live in a country full of diversity and not expect, different ideas or perspectives. That's why being able to marry people of a different orientation is important. That's why it's okay to be somebody who wants to be a girl. Now, in my opinion, we need the proper education for certain things like that. Being knowledgeable about what those kind of, for example, people who want to transition from a male to a girl or a girl to a male, or, a female to a male, you have to be aware of the biological effects. You have to be, and some people like to start at a younger age, and, then parents get involved, and I get that aspect. There's a lot of that aspect. But if people truly feel a certain way, that's protected in America. And I get it. If some people try to and specifically, let's talk about the transgender. If people try to transition themselves and it doesn't go the way they were expecting, that sucks too, right? And we don't want that. And the good thing about medical progress is that we can help solve those kind of things. But, those people have a right. They have the right to be that person. If that's who they are, then they have that right. They have that right. In America, they have that right. And the religious community, they don't want people to think that they have that right. They want a more traditional family values. Okay, so man and women, you need a man and a woman to be able to procreate, to continue life. Okay, we get that concept. But you know what? There's enough people, there's billions of people in the world. That's why the whole having a child thing really isn't that big of a deal to me. It's because there's already enough children in the world. Some of you can actually adopt children. Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, for all their disagreements, personal relationship, they did a really great thing in adopting children. They didn't have kids, but they were able to be parents by adopting children. And there's a lot of children out there who would benefit from being adopted. There's a lot of children who don't have the proper families and who would benefit from having a family sometimes, and who grow up in certain conditions and places. Adoption's a great option. So, having children is an important aspect of family for a lot of people, but it's not the only way to define a family. And being straight is not the only way to define a family. So I'm not the only one who's been discriminated in the whole family argument. And I'm so happy, that things like gay and lesbian and transgender marriage is possible for people in my lifetime. And I don't want to see other rights taken, for granted because of it. Roe v. Wade being rescinded. It's really funny to me. The people who think that Roe v. Wade isn't important. The people who think that women don't have a right to do those kind of things. And I do think there's a certain time frame and window to have the abortion before you should have the child. And even then, you can give that child up for adoption, technically speaking. If you don't feel you're fit for a parent, if you exceed the window to have the abortion. But it's funny to me how the religious community makes a big deal about the birth and conception of life, but they don't care as much about the quality of life sometimes. They want something to be born and be given life, but then when it's born, they start, they want it to be a part of an agenda. They want it to fulfill their idea of a certain perspective of life. That's horseshit. They care about the conception of life, but they don't care about the quality of life. What's the deal with that? It's confused. It's almost a contradiction. So, and they want to govern society. They want to govern society that values independence, liberty, and civil rights, but they don't give a shit about even some of the most basic foundations of that society. It's just confusing. So, I don't like seeing things like Roe v. Wade overturned because people want to regress people's rights. I do think it's a state issue. I do believe that. But I don't think you needed to get rid of Roe v. Wade to make it a state issue. And you know what the beautiful part about, there's one shining light that occurred from the rescinding of Roe v. Wade. And maybe one day Roe v. Wade will be reinstated. We'll see what happens in the Supreme Court, or maybe it happens down the road, or whatever it is. But there's one positive thing that occurred, and that even though Roe v. Wade was overturned, it showed you how much people believe in it. Because even those states, had the ability to not, they weren't federally obligated to protect abortion rights, it shows you how many states do believe in it. And the states, it shows you some states that were just waiting for Roe v. Wade to disappear before they could start, doing more abortion laws. It really was a small percentage compared to the rest of the United States. And that, in my opinion, is a positive thing. Even though Roe v. Wade was overturned, there were still so many states who still valued and protected, and California is one of those states, who still valued and protected the aspects of what it meant to give women the right to choose those kind of things on their own instead of being forced into a situation. So, this whole civil rights movement, the whole idea of family and money and in the governance, it's so important. And, I want to be a part of the group of people that make sure that our civil rights is valued and protected and increased instead of reduced, I want to be a part of the group of people that make sure that my lasting impact was meant on, including people and not discluding people, and here's another, people love to use the term racist a lot, you know what real racism is? It's discluding people from the opportunity and the participation of things simply based on the color of their skin. That is real racism. Real racism is not giving people not just the opportunity, it's taking away people's opportunity and participation simply based of the color of their skin. And so there's this whole thing with people using racism, calling people racist and saying, oh, you're racist. There's a difference between people being, critical of certain, perspectives and controversial in regards to certain language, how people reference each other. Ethnic vulgarity and racism, two way different things. People can have ethnically vulgar opinions, people can have but it doesn't make them a racist. What real racism is discluding people from the opportunity and the participation based on their skin color alone. That's real racism. So in this whole game of civil rights, race really is an important thing. And black people, honestly, have suffered a lot, specifically just them, you know? I know, when people could say, like, blacks aren't allowed, but it also said no colors are allowed, but, they didn't say things like no Hispanics allowed, did they? Or no Asians allowed. And this is the one area where black people, unfortunately, have had, an unfair disadvantage in things, and why they have a right to be upset about things. Because a lot of the racist past that America has was specifically directed towards the African American community. I've always been in support of people's rights, no matter their skin color, gender. I really always have. But black people definitely have. And Jewish people are in a similar category to a certain extent. Jewish people and black people have certain similar histories. Jewish people have a history of slavery as well. The pyramids were built by Jewish slaves. Jewish people have a history of slavery as well. And I know I'm not religious Jewish, but Judaism and my history of Judaism, there is an element of slavery in there as well. And so I was never technically a slave, and there are other people who are African Americans who weren't a slave as well, but they feel the discrimination just based off of their skin color. And there are things part of history that, it really is fucked up. So, when you all fight these fights of civil rights and discriminations, understand those aspects. And then don't just take terms like racism and generalize it to such a base degree. Really understand what real racism is. Because real racism, for all races, is not being given the opportunity and the ability to participate. Because you can say you're giving people the opportunity, but if they're not being given the ability to participate, that's just as bad. And if it's done simply because of their skin color, and this is one of the unique things about Judaism, by the way. Judaism is a race. Being Jewish is a race. Christianity is not the same. Christianity is not a race, it's a religion. But Judaism is a race and a religion and a community. So Jewish people can be subjected to certain discriminatory, they have that history as well. We've been fighting Jewish discrimination the same way that African Americans have been fighting real racism, not being included. And this is why education is important. That's why things like affirmative action occurred. It was to give people the opportunity and the ability to participate. Because when you can get members of your community, whether that's Asian, Black, Mexican, Hispanic, or Pacific Islander, Native American, when you give them the ability to become educated, it gives that whole community power. That's why allowing people to receive education, that's why affirmative action really is an important thing. It's not taking away, it's not racist in the sense that you're excluding other people based on race. You're trying to include people who need the education aspect so they can empower their own people to have a fair journey in America where diversity is a thing. Now, personally, I'd like to see I'd like to see in my lifetime the ability to really truly step away from the whole, the racial group mentality and everybody grouping into their own thing just simply based on race. Diversity is really great. Honestly, it really is. I'd like to see people, not taking racism to the point of debasing it to such a base level that you create a societal problem because nobody knows what real racism is. So in this whole civil rights journey, which is really existing in America, we really are in a civil rights battle these days. It really is occurring. Make sure you understand some of these things instead of just, don't just call people racist. Make sure you understand what racism is. If you've got controversial opinions, yeah, it's protected by free speech. But if you're saying stupid shit, that's when you should have a conversation with people. And if they're unwilling to have a conversation with you, then that shows who they are. That's why free speech is protected in America. So you can have conversations. So you can't just silence and censor certain things because it's too controversial. The controversial stuff is exactly what America's about. It's supposed to talk about controversy because we have the rights to be able to talk about it. So family life, racist, not putting false racism on people. If people are saying things that are controversial in regards to people's ethnic backgrounds, have the conversation. And if you have the conversation, and you can really tell what the person thinks, honestly, that's the whole point. This whole TikTok, Instagram, the small videos with everybody's their short attention span. Real civil rights isn't about these little short attention span things. Real civil rights involves conversation. Real civil rights involves being able to express things using the full extent of our rights and our liberties and our constitutional values. So in our civil rights movement as America goes forward, and we are in another civil rights movement. I really believe this. Just do it with intelligence, do it with education. Don't just blanket call people certain things. And have the conversation. Because if you have the conversation, you can really see how intelligent the person is, and you can really see what they truly believe. That's where you can really see where people are. When you have the conversation, because they'll either be able to contribute to the conversation, or they'll just give you all these bullshit excuses and make up stuff that doesn't even make sense. And that's when you can tell the difference. That's when you tell the difference. All right. I know this was about governance, but obviously, maybe today's stream is definitely more about civil rights. But you know what? That is part of governance. In America, civil rights is a part. And I know it's a newer concept. We had independence, liberty, and civil rights was something that developed in the past, it's been developing in the past 150 years or so, right when we start the Civil War. So let's see what let's see what the old man here has for us.
It is done.
Johnson is dead?
No. He retreated when we destroyed the T.
Only to hatch some new scheme, I'm sure. You should have killed him.
There was no need.
Time will tell if you speak the truth.
Radun Hagedum! Radun Hagedum! Ganondokon, why are you here? Has something happened?
William Johnson has returned with all the money required to buy our land. He meets with the elders as we speak. I have begged him to resist, but I fear he shall have his way unless you intervene.
How is this possible? We destroyed the T.
The Templars are nothing if
Destroyed
not
the T.
resourceful.
How's it possible?
You should have heeded my warning.
Please, you have to stop him.
Of course. Can you tell me where they're meeting?
All right. Oh no, I'm still streaming. Thanks for asking, Dad. I know this is a long one, but you know what? I think it's okay this time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see, where are we at? Let's see, we're an hour and a half in. Yeah, let's keep it going a little bit. Well, normally I have the, normally we do these things for about an hour or so. But I think we can push it a little bit to complete the storyline a little here. Or maybe should we do like a little side mission first? Or let's do a homestead mission. Let's do something like this. And then we'll call it. Get a little homestead mission out of the way. Try and just catch up on some of the lack of gameplay, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially when you have conversations like this. I think it's very, fruitful and productive. Ah, wait, that's not a moose. Okay, that's not a moose. That's a good thing.
Connor,
Just a
it
deer.
has occurred to me
Deer.
that the times we live in will be looked upon by future generations with a certain degree of scrutiny,
Of course.
no matter the outcome.
No matter exactly, no
With
matter
that
there's
in
always going to be
mind,
scrutiny.
I think it valuable to record the goings-on around the homestead. A true log of how people lived during this time of transition. Something to help color the portrait. What do you think?
When I find a moment, I will try.
Very good.
So, wait. Do I have to do anything? Wait, what's a homestead mission? Do I even have to do anything? What just happened? Is it just kind of like a cutscene? Okay, well, what's this one about? That was a mission. Let's see what this one's all about.
Bloody hell! Can you help me?
I'm gonna try.
Are you all right?
What do you think?
How did this happen?
Poachers in the woods. I asked them to leave. This was their answer.
Come on. We need to get that arm looked at.
What if the men who did this?
They can wait. Your wound cannot. Be able to make it to the house.
Oh, see, this is a mission.
Yes. I think the ball took only flesh.
And what is your name?
Miriam.
Do you live nearby?
I don't have a home per se. I took to the frontier when I was a young girl. I made my life out here ever since.
Sounds like me.
Living where the land makes it easiest.
Who wants
Not
to carry
a common
me?
choice for a woman of the colonies.
Do you want to carry me?
No, it's not. But truth be told, it was this, the convent or the brothels. I prefer the open air.
See? The convent or the brothels. The whorehouses or the churches. Even back in the day, you know. Or brothel, you know, whorehouse. That was... But, you know what I mean? Like, even back in the day, like, you either did, you know, the things that people did to survive, right? That's why sex and, like, religion, you know, they've always been at odds ends with each other. That's why they want their family, you know, their traditional family value to be more important. Because then, oh, gosh, the craziness ensues. Well, I don't think craziness ensues. I think, you know, as long as, like, for example, if people in the kink community that practice kink in the United States also make sure to value independence, liberty, and civil rights, then I think kink in the United States is an okay thing. I think there are different types of kink that are operated or, you know, exist around the world. And I think the world of kink is just as old as many religions are, by the way, that maybe don't conform to American ideals. But I think that if you practice kink or the kink lifestyle in America, you should include independence, liberty, and civil rights as a part of that. And part of that means not keeping people hostage in your dominant, submissive world. You know, allowing people to step away from your little dominant submission world. You know, and some of these people that get too into their kink lifestyles, and they force people to stay in their worlds, and it becomes like a hostage situation, or like they do things so kinky that, you know, they fear somebody leaving their little kink community because they know too much. That's not the right kink for America. It might work in other countries, but in America, you have to allow people to leave just as much as they have a right to join. You know, consent really, you know, is a big, you know, it should be a big deal in all of the kink community, but in America, you know, and I know the people who are like, you know, the traditional family values crowd who gets, you know, all iffy about the kink world. I get it. There are aspects of the kink world that even I don't like, at least the ones that are practiced in the United States. I am aware of that, and trust me, those individuals are also on my radar. Those kink communities are also on my radar. I'm somebody who values the more kink lifestyle that centers on independence, liberty, and civil rights. You know, that's why I'm waiting for people to join me on my journey. And when they join me on my journey, they're not stuck there. They're free to leave at any time that they want. And that's where the civil rights and the independence and liberty comes in. I don't want somebody bondage to my kink journey. I want somebody to join my kink journey, my kink life, to be a part of my poly family. That's the family, I'm the non-traditional, my poly family. I want them to do so on their own consent. And if we develop dynamics within that, that's great, but I don't want them to be a hostage or bondage to my poly family. If they choose to leave, then that is their right. And I think there are people who have been practicing kink in the United States who aren't allowing people to leave because they get too deep into it, or they turn them into such a submissive state that they forget their own American values. In my world of kink, in my poly family, the order of operations still puts America first. I just have a non-traditional point of view on the family perspective, but it's still family, and I'm trying to develop that family. I don't mean my biological family. I mean my relationship poly family, which is separate from biology family, in my opinion. So, I want you all to, for the traditional family values peoples in the religious world, I too have a problem with the aspects of the kink community that keep people a hostage and that take away their ability to consent or leave a certain situation. I too have a problem with that. And that's why this is taking a long time for me, is like, a lot of people think they have to corrupt and violate people to the point where they become submissive enough to be forced into it. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create my own lifestyle perspective, and I want people who share that perspective to join me. But I want them to do so consensually, and if they choose to leave, then they have that right as well. They absolutely have that right. I'm not a representative of the kink community that wants to take away people's rights. I want them to value their rights. As an American in the United States of America practicing kink and to try to create my own poly family, that is an important element to me. To give people the opportunity to join on their own accord and to leave on their own accord if they want. So, yeah.
Kana, what are you doing?
Those poachers need to be stopped.
Saw the scabs from my hunting blind. Get to that, and you shouldn't have any trouble finding them.
Use the rope dart if you can.
Rope dart.
Get familiar with it.
Yeah, you got a lot of weapons in this Assassin's Creed 3 that got all kinds of things. You got rope darts, you got muskets, you got poison, smoke bomb. Some smoke bombs, trip mines, all kinds of fucking horse whistle like that. Alright, let's... Horsey. Horsey. No big deal. Thanks, Horsey. Appreciate it. And all horses, thank you. Thank you to all horses of all shapes and sizes and horse skin colored things. Whoa. Poison darts. Let's see. Let's see if we can get our... Do we have poison darts? Rope dart. Okay, how do I... I don't know how to make a rope dart work. Wait. Rope dart. Hiya? Wait. What the hell? How does the rope dart work? Oh. Okay. Well, that's one way to do it, I guess. Oh! Oh gosh! Don't look! Can we bow and arrow this guy? Rope dart is a very... It's very brutal. slow down, rope dart. Rope dart! Okay. That's less brutal. And there's Bambi. Hey, Bambi, what are you doing? You stuck there, Bambi? Oh, stuck. Oh, look. Little IBI vibe. Are you stuck in the IBI vibe? Are you stuck in the IBI? Look, you little Bambi. I see you're contributing to my Bambi hooves theory. Horse hooves? Horse hooves? Horse hooves. Deer hooves. Deer prancing. Prancing deer. IVI. Thank you very much. More poachers! Okay. Rope dart? Okay, rope dart that.
William Johnson's opening
get outta
up
here.
some of that Mohawk land he purchased for free hunting soon. Might be we make a good haul up there.
I hear tell lumbering will be allowed to boot.
What does he want with the territory if not the game and timber?
Don't know. Don't much care neither. Be skulking around these woods.
Huh?
Something don't feel right.
Like,
Feeling a bit guilty on account of
rope
that
dart?
woman you put a hole in?
Nah.
like rope
See
dart?
had it coming.
Wait, no, you gotta. Okay, break. Counter, break the fence. In your face. Yeah. Now we gotta find the last position. Poaching. You know, I hope people aren't poaching relationships opportunities for me. Because again, my life's journey on finding a long-term relationship and then, trying to find a match and having people try to poach that. Rope dart!
Hey! Where are you, fellas?
So poaching, don't poach.
Shooting strangers in the forest, is that common hunting practice where you come from? No. Spare me. Go. Tell the friends you have left what happened here.
Wait, so we let that guy live? Okay. Well, hopefully they won't poach anymore. Hopefully the poaching has come to an end. There we go. Squirrel! Okay. Here we go. And this should be, I think this is going to be the last mission for today.
Thank you, Achilles.
You are most welcome.
Why did those men attack you?
It's no secret this land is full with game. I spotted the trespassers en route to request permission to hunt here myself, and suggested they do the same.
The bounty of the forest is not mine to give. It is your right to hunt on this land, but I would appreciate you trading your surplus with the others.
Very well. I accept.
There you go. Maybe that's a metaphor for people trying to meet people in the kink community. No more poaching. Respect independence, liberty, and civil rights. Okay. Well, at least that's how I'm building my kink community, or my kink foundation, my poly family, my poly life. I am building it off of, and again, I have a whole list of things that I believe in and value in regards to that thing. If for people who are on FetLife and who know what my FetLife profile is, I have a whole thing specifically dedicated to the things that I believe in and what I'm trying to value. with my Poly family and House of Moose stuff, separate from my Moose Media, House of Moose Media, my House Moose Media, and my Poly House of Moose. Two very, I get it. There can be confusion, but I find the value in the IVI. Like, there's value, and to me, I appreciate the IVI. It represents so many things. It represents media, civil rights. A whole thing with IV's eyes, and it's just there's obviously even the people in like the government, like the police have their version, the kink have their version, and Hollywood has their version. There's a lot of IVI references. Relativity media. So IVI is not. I'm not the first one to think of the IVI thing. But I obviously have this Moose account and the IVI thing. It's pronounced Moose. But so that's why I don't mind having my House of Moose or a House of IVI thing represented in different ways, because it's already represented in different ways in many different parts of society. The government has this, civil rights, IVI and civil rights. You know what I mean? So IVI is representative in so many different ways, and that's why I kind of like the IVI vibe. Speaking of, there's one. Check it out. Right there. So, and I guess for whatever reason I'm lucky enough to have the IVI Moose account, and maybe other people have tried to, I don't know, my original account wasn't IVI, wasn't Moose in the IVI sense. But maybe some people crafted this kind of story together because they saw my talent as an entertainer, an ability to speak my mind and to speak about controversial topics without having, I don't mind talking about controversial topics. I really don't. I never have. It's always been a trademark of me. I've always had the ability to talk about these things. So, for people who kind of like worry about the connection, but at the same time, my content, and I know there was initially when I was doing the Apex stuff, there was some confusion about that, but even that, the Apex stuff, that was more centered on telling a story via music and video games about the video game industry and the crime and kind of like gang crime element, organized crime element that was going on in that, and that's still very much a thing going. Like, there's a lot of things that are associated with the crime aspect of the video game world that I prefer be investigated, but that it was all of my content is meant to be for adult audiences, 18 and over, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's all related to my relationship life. The media aspect of my things is very different than my relationship aspect of things. They can intertwine, though, in the sense that people who share my IVI relationship vision can also appreciate my IVI media vision. So it's not like you don't have to be mutually exclusive. Like, you can appreciate both aspects. You can appreciate my kink world or my kink vision and my media vision. But I just want people to be aware of that. My intention is they are separate, but they do represent something that's been around for a while now. Who's growling? Who is this? What are you growling for? What are you? Shush. What? Oh my gosh, we gotta deal with this. But it represents something that's been around for a while, and other people have done the IVI thing. I'm not the first one to do it, and maybe my ability to have the IVI, is a recognition of people who have been protecting that kind of thing. Hey, Mr. Wolf. Good night. Sheesh.
Yama.
Let me just take that. So maybe the IVI thing is kind of recognition from people who already have been practicing the IVI perspective from different angles, whether that be in government or politics or Hollywood entertainment. So, maybe that's just their, kind of like approval, how this whole IVI Moose thing kind of transpired. And, I built upon it not just my media perspective, but I built upon it my, my relationship life, because it's valuable to me and it's important to me, and it's part of my life's pursuit. Up to this point, it's been finding a long-term relationship has been a pursuit of mine. So thank you for watching. For those of you that are here live, and for those of you that watch watch the non-live version, thank you so much for showing your support by making it all the way to the end of this video. This is one of our longer ones, almost 2 hours in. I thank you for spending the time. I think I talked about a lot of good stuff that is very important and valuable to America and its civil rights, its new civil rights movement. And yeah, I'll see you all on Monday, and have a good one. Thank you so much. All right, have a good one, everyone.